This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you guys in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. I'm joined today with a very special guest, Jasmine Partida from 100 Post System. Hi, Jasmine. How are you doing?
Hi. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm very excited to have you, very excited for our conversation and everything that's going to happen today.
Yeah, me too. I'm ready to get into it.
So to kind of break the ice a little bit and kind of get our guests warmed up on who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do? Um, just give us a background.
Yeah, so I'm a social media strategist. I help people with organic social media. So anything that's not paid is my specialty. And I started in '08, which was 17 years ago. When I started, it was at the beginning of the recession. So when I first started, and I saw a number of businesses go under, to be honest, close their doors. And so when I started in social media, it was this very real space of we're doing social media because we have to find more people. We have to get in front of more people to get more clients. And nobody really knew how to strategize for sales yet. It wasn't a degree. It wasn't taught on YouTube University yet. It was really,
Yeah.
or it was really being created in real time, but it didn't matter. We still had to reach those strategies to get those businesses clients. So I, to this day, approach social media as a very sales focused space for businesses, um, and making sure that what we're doing is converting. And I've spent the last 17 years really focused on that. And my passion is really making sure to help those small businesses that are that best kept secret in their neighborhood or in their town. And if more people just knew about them, they would flourish. Those are my people. I love those kind of companies to work with.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I think like when you find the sort of really quality type of product or service and nobody knows about it, you really want to be like, how are people not coming here or doing this when it's so great?
Yeah, it
Like,
makes you crazy. I'll tell 3 friends, but I'm just one human. No.
yeah, my three friends, and then from those three, who is actually going to show up to, yeah,
Also true.
yeah. I actually have this might be a little bit of a tangent, but I'm known for doing that. So bear with me. But I have this it reminds me of this business. So I went to college in Taiwan. And the reason that that's important for this little story of mine is because in Taiwan, obviously Asian food is what you can find the most of. And I'm Latin American. I'm from El Salvador, so we couldn't really find any kind of Latino food there.
Mm,
It was very rare. There were a couple of Mexican restaurants, but it was like one or two, and they were very like Asian style food. So I don't know if that makes sense. So they had like made this sort of like their version of Mexican food. So it wasn't I'm not complaining it wasn't bad, but you get homesick and you want to try you
mm,
sometimes miss the food from your home and stuff. There's this Colombian guy who moved there, and he actually started to sell Colombian food because he got married to a Taiwanese lady, but it was a really small business. It was just like on the garage of the house where he was living with his wife there and stuff. And me and all of the Latino people, we were like his biggest clients, but we were not a big community? So like we were like the best kept secret. Like he was like the best kept secret, like you said. And I think out of word of mouth or whatever, his business started to grow. But I feel like once it grew, it changed because it sort of, I think it got so big that he couldn't do it all himself. So he had to start hiring people and working with other people, and he moved to this local where he was actually renting like a place and stuff. And I feel like the quality of the food kind of declined, not to burn him, but I think that, like, he really struggled with scaling. Like, once it scaled, yeah, it was really difficult.
No, but that's really interesting you say that because it's true. Scaling is not as simple as you think it's gonna be, and I've had people, I had a whole TikTok that went viral around this where I was like, just because you want a bunch more sales doesn't mean your business is internally ready for more sales. You have to if I send you 1,000 people, can you service that 1,000 people? So
Yeah.
another part of social media strategy that I actually love you're bringing up because nobody talks about this is it's not just about views or sales or leads or any of those things. It's about the level of scalability and how fast you can grow and take those on. Otherwise, it's going to absolutely crush your business. And we've seen that happen where somebody was selling keychains or jewelry or something, and then it went viral on TikTok or Instagram. And they ran out of it. The quality control went down. The customer service was crap. They didn't respond for refunds because they didn't have the internal pieces. And it actually ends up sinking the business. So I talk about when you come to me and you're looking for sales, let's phase up what you're doing over a few months so that you can be phasing up your internal processes as well. Because too few or too many, both of those will sink your business equally, right?
Yeah,
So you do
dude.
have to have some balance.
It's so important, and you're so right, like, going back to that example from that Colombian guy, like, I really feel like it was a shame because I don't think that, he was ready to sort of grow so much. His business got so popular, and he moved to this sort of restaurant area where it was very crowded, so he was getting a bunch of people sort of purchasing this food, and when it was a small business, it was him cooking for the people that came. But I think once it was sort of like an actual big establishment, he had to sort of get other people, and I don't know why it was so difficult to sort of keep the quality of the food intact. Mostly I think because it wasn't him the only he couldn't possibly be the only cook anymore. And having to handle all of those things really sort of made it difficult for it to sustain itself, and they actually ended up closing down because I think they could not handle the amount of people that they were getting.
Well, that's probably true, but I also wonder, and I've seen this happen with businesses where they've got their own kind of magic spice or sauce or whatever it is, and not just food related, but just in general, they've got their own bit of magic. And then as it gets more popular, people are like, "Oh, I really love this. I just wish it had a little more of this or a little more of that."
Yeah.
And they bring in too many of those suggestions instead of sticking to their core. It's okay to change a little bit and to expand or to offer different things. But if you go too far off that path, you've strayed so far from where you started that made you popular. So I could see that going down as well.
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that you were, like, saying that because I do think that a lot of businesses struggle with, like, once they have that point when they're scaling, it's like, "Well, what do I do now?" And I think that's a very crucial point for a business owner because I think it really sucks that, like, you've been wishing for your business to grow, and then once it grows, it ends up being your downfall. That's, like, horrible.
Yeah. No, and I actually have, I have a couple of things that I do. One of the things that I'm known for is taking people viral. And so, I took somebody viral for the first time in 2014, and everybody was like, "That was amazing." And then somebody was like, "Okay, let's do it next week." And I'm like, "No, it just went viral. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell you." And it kind of dawned on me that it wasn't really valuable of a skill unless I could replicate it. So I've been studying viral content for over a decade now. And so one of the things I can tell you is a lot of people they think it's going to save their business to go viral and get 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 5,000,000 views on their product or service or their restaurant, right? And it doesn't necessarily happen that way. Either you don't end up getting any sales from going viral, or you go viral for the wrong thing, which is much more common, or you go viral so fast that you can't intake everything like we've been talking about. So there's some balance that you need to have in how you scale externally and internally, and they have to align or it breaks.
That's really interesting that you were doing this since 2014. So, like or actually, you said in '08, yeah,
I
right?
started in '08, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was so young in 2008, Imma be for real, so I don't really, like
All good.
I mean, remember how, like, the internet was back then because I wasn't really allowed on it, but, I am so curious to how you got into social media, considering that back in 2008, 2013, 2014, all like I think social media marketing in and of itself sort of became a thing later on, right? Like, I think we started to see it become really popular in like maybe 2015, 2016 when like
Yeah.
influencers started to become like very popular and YouTubers and all of that started to pop up. It might be because I'm too young, but I feel like before it
Yeah.
might have existed, but it wasn't as common.
It wasn't as common. In fact, I would get hired and people would be like, "Well, we want you to be the social media coordinator, but you can't come to any of the marketing meetings because that doesn't really matter. We just need you to post some stuff on social media." And I would be like, "But don't you want that to match what you're doing in the marketing?" And nobody had the mindset to understand that they should go together. It was just sort of something other people were doing. Um, I got in the marketing because I was actually an art major. I was a scenic artist for theater. So I would travel around the country, New York and Oregon and all over, painting those big 30 by 50-foot backdrops for opera, dance, theaters, right? And when I would paint those, it would take, I mean, probably 2 hours to dry. So while it was drying as an art major, I was in the business office chilling, honestly. And they were like, "Well, what about this poster? Or what about this message?" I'm like, "Well, that's not really what the play is about, or that's not really what the audience, the opera audience is looking for." And I found that in these smaller theaters and locations I was in, I was able to help the marketing department. And then it was like, okay, well, let me see if I can get this on Twitter. Let me see if I can send this to somebody else on Twitter that will share it. Tumblr is really taking off on this one subject right now. Let's tap into the Tumblr. So that's how I ended up starting in social media was that way. And I discovered that, especially at the time, frankly, being of an age that was more, I mean, honestly, I was just this younger age at the time, right? So I can't think of what age I was. What I would have been 30, 29, I think 29. So it was really smooth transition for me where a lot of the older people in marketing were really struggling to wrap their head around it. So I was able to make fast moves and fast innovations in that space that I think a lot of marketing people were not. And you're right, it looked totally different. So the way that we first went viral in 2014 was actually on YouTube, which was the goal, like was to go viral on YouTube because that was like the place to be seen. Twitter and YouTube are the 2 big places. Yeah. And Facebook pages were just kinda coming around when I started. It was like, you might have a business page. I think they don't initially, I don't think there were business pages, and then as I started to come up, it was so slow because nobody was gonna I wasn't following any business pages. I was following my friends and family, right? I wasn't even following family at the time, actually. So it took a while to get Facebook into the mix, and then Instagram came along and took off prior to Meta buying it. So it was interesting to watch. But what's really cool about viral content is over the 17 years, over, I don't know, what, 20 platforms, what viral content is hasn't changed. So like every piece of viral content always has 4 elements to it. That always has something that we relate to, so we connect to it emotionally. It's something we can easily understand in just that piece of content. If it's a graphic, if it's a video, if it's a blog post, we understand it completely. We don't have to go search. It's something that inspires us to take action, whether it's to share with a friend, to comment and join the conversation. And it's something unique that we haven't seen quite before. So I always say, like, cat videos and like Nike ads, the ones that go viral are always have those 4 elements to it. So as you're moving through time and the changes in the internet and moving forward, those 4 elements still have to be there to really take off.
Run me through the 4 elements again. You said
Yeah.
relatability, right?
Yeah. We have to be able to relate and connect to it emotionally. It has to be something that is unique that we haven't seen before. It has to be something that inspires us to take action, whether that's join the conversation in the comments or share it with a friend. And it has to be something that is very quickly and easily understood. We can't have to unpack an entire political policy, for example. Like it has to be something we quickly get what it is and what it's about.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, Jasmine, because I feel like I've noticed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, this might again be my youth talking, but I feel like once influencer culture sort of came up in social media, I think it's a huge, huge aspect of social media. Influencers have really just, shaped a lot of the way that marketing is done in social media. But I feel like I think a lot of like the popular and bigger influencers that you see nowadays are very famous because they've been able to sort of figure out what that formula is and what that strategy is that is going to make them get a lot of views and followers and sort of grow their pages into becoming very successful and lucrative. But more than that, I think we see that they're not marketers. A lot of them were like they started being really young kids that were just like doing what they were seeing online and then they saw a bunch of success from it. But what's interesting to me is that I think a lot of influencers sort of shape the way that marketing is done on social media, even if it's not through influencer marketing itself. I don't know if that makes sense.
So I think there's truth in that, but I think there's a bigger element to it in the marketing world and how things will move through online because um, any kind of filming trends, any kind of new app, all these things add to the mix of moving us forward and how we take in content and how then ads are trying to reflect the new trends. So influencers have been a section of that, absolutely. But there's a couple other elements. One is that society does this funky thing, and I always tell people pick 2 platforms, one of each of this type of platform, because society is always going from one type of platform to another type of platform. So I'm gonna break that down. So there's 2 kind of styles of algorithms. One is the high visibility, which is gonna be like TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, right? Those are like it goes out to strangers first. It's high visibility. That's where you reach new people. And then there's the community-based algorithm, which is gonna be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, right? Those are where it goes out to your
Your
connections
followers.
first in your
Yeah.
community. And if enough of them engage, then they'll be like, sure, this is good enough quality content to send to somebody else, right? So you actually go viral also opposite on the 2 platforms. But to your influencer point, um, that was a community that started as a community-based platform that really started on, a little bit on YouTube, and then what you're talking about, I think, is more specifically from the early days of Instagram even, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the Kardashian era, if you will. And over the last 7 years, we've been moving out of that era and moving into this, like, deeply authentic, we wanna discover new people, new places, new things, and TikTok came along just at the right time for that. So marketing is following these trends, but it's very slight, but we're starting to go back already towards the community, and you're seeing that with an uptick of, uh, uh, views and things on LinkedIn. So, like, for example, I'll take a video and put it on LinkedIn. I get an average of 200,000 views a week from, like, 3 or 4 videos on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is now a place that people are starting to go and engage in more. And that's just one of those signs that we're moving back to the community-based platform. So influencers that are successful over time have somehow intuitively or just talking to each other or just being very tied into these platforms are able to go between those 2 and understand how to do that. And that is a really amazing skill that most people just can't track that much information. And I do think what happens then as marketing companies end up trying to reflect the style of their videos, and so it looks like you're not seeing an ad, it looks like you're just seeing another
Yeah.
yeah,
The reason that I was saying that is just because I feel like with the rise of I mean, I think what I've seen changing with influencer culture was like I remember like the early days of influencers being really different, right? I think the farthest I can think of what an influencer would probably be these type of socialites like Paris Hilton and stuff like that who weren't really celebrities, but they were famous. Well, I mean, she is a celebrity, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they didn't have a specific, like, "Oh, I'm a singer," or "I'm an actress" type of thing, but they were just kind of really famous. And then, it sort of snowballed into what we know today to be an influencer. But I feel like I noticed it when TikTok came around, and it started to get really big, because on TikTok, I noticed that content that is kind of organic and fun and lighthearted is very popular. And it was normal to see that from people, right? From an influencer or a person or something. But then when I started to see that type of like funny meme sort of content on brands, I was like, and I feel like that's become a thing now with marketing where like you see so many brands on TikTok and they comment on influencers' videos, really funny comments. Or they'll make like meme videos. And you see these type of brands like Duolingo or Ryanair, they're the ones that come to mind that are super successful on those platforms. And their marketing is so like, they're posting like they were an influencer, like they were like a fun thing. And I'm like, did they get sort try to copy that from what they were seeing influencers and people doing on TikTok?
So it's actually multi-leveled, and you've hit on um, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about social media, especially currently, is because for the first time in history, a small brand or business can actually do better, perform better, and get more views, more sales, and things from social media than Target and Macy's. That was not true when I started, where you needed a budget to compete. So it's interesting because when you go to Target, and probably I haven't looked at Macy's in a while, but like Target's TikTok, it's all just UGC. It's all just user created
Yeah, UGC
stories
is huge too,
because if
yeah.
they do an ad, it won't perform. And I know that the marketing team or some of the marketing team in San Francisco for Target and they start 7 months ahead. They've got their Christmas stuff done in the summer, like, they're on it, and then they're hitting the end of the year, and it's not performing. So now they're having to add in these other pieces to drive traffic because the typical stuff, we don't want it, which is like I said, we're going to that high visibility content as users. So we don't want the ads, we don't wanna follow a brand. We want to connect with other people. We wanna connect. If there's a brand on there like Duolingo is killing it, we for their audience, right? We want to see things that are actually pulling us in for that connection and that entertainment piece versus here's just a really beautiful couch. And we're just gonna do a soft fade over this couch. Like that's what the videos used to be when Target started, right? Or chairs or whatever. So I think it's really important to see that it's not just influencer marketing, but small businesses have this opportunity to show up very authentically and build out their own space for sales. You don't have to be copying somebody else. And I know what you're saying about influencers, but I think that's only a small piece of it. I think a lot more of it is the users are demanding they stop showing us so many ads, are demanding a space where we can connect with other people. And so brands are having to readjust. When you're talking about the Paris Hiltons, that's more of that highly curated, perfect life that was frankly unattainable and a lot of influencers were faking. That has gotten really torn down over the last, again, about 7 years as we've moved to this more high visibility type platform. So even influencers, we saw this with the Met Gala trauma, like not trauma, drama, last year where it was like cancel celebrities, cancel influencers. People want that deep authenticity. Brands are gonna have to lean into that to be successful at this point.
Yeah, I think authenticity is I mean, I think as people, we always crave authenticity, but I think never more than before because we've been fed so much curated content at this point that
Yes.
it totally makes sense. Also, I mean, I was talking to someone about this earlier. Gen Z is also just a generation that I think identifies a lot with that, right? Which I think also influences that idea, especially maybe with like more youth focused marketing. I'm assuming that, with older crowds and different it changes depending on your niche, obviously, in your industry,
Yeah.
but I do think that authenticity is very, very coveted nowadays.
I I I hear a lot of talk about it from a generational standpoint, but I truly believe it's from a societal standpoint. And this is not a great example, but it's the best visual I can give you, which was the 2016 election, where Bernie Sanders was pulling in a bajillion people and Trump was pulling in a bajillion people. And so people on all political spectrums, people of all ages were going to the person they felt was the most authentically speaking to them. And that was 2016. That was almost 10 years ago. So I really do think it's across generations, which is why TikTok has exploded the way that it has. It's like half of America is on TikTok, right? And that's just our country. Like there's other countries on there too. So it's a lot of users and it's a lot of connection points in a way that we didn't have on Instagram because Instagram again was the community based. So it wasn't somebody you were following or something that got promoted up to you because a lot of people engaged with it. You were just never going to see it. TikTok, you can see something that was posted 30 minutes ago that's taken off and already has a million views. So there's power in that piece as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think, like, the differentiation with like, the aspect of how many platforms we have nowadays and how different they all are from each other really influences a lot of this.
Yeah.
Um, when we were facing the TikTok ban and, I mean, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but I feel like when the TikTok ban was about to happen, I saw on TikTok specifically that the discussion was I don't want to go to Instagram because it's not the same. Like, it's not the same vibe, it's not the same feeling, blah, 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 because people felt like authenticity was just easier on TikTok than it was on Instagram. Because or people saying like, "I don't wanna post videos on Instagram, I just wanna post pictures with my friends, and I wanna post TikToks on TikTok." Um, and I think it really highlighted how different the platforms are and how we really do see that authenticity discussion happening in different ways, depending on where the platforms are changing.
Yeah, I mean, they are different, and, so Instagram's algorithm is community based, so it's always gonna show to your connections, your followers first. TikTok is the exact opposite. So when you're looking at the feeds, the For You pages, they're literally the opposite. So it's hard to take what you're doing on TikTok, put that over to Instagram and have the same experience. I don't know that that's bad, they're just different. And at one point, a couple of 2 years ago, I think it was, not TikTok, Instagram said, "We're gonna now be a video sharing app. We're gonna prioritize video because of the success of TikTok." And people lost their absolute minds. And Kim Kardashian actually even started like a petition. And it was not even a full week before Instagram came out and was like, we went overboard. We kind of misspoke. That's not quite what we meant. And they kind of walked it back because everyone's like, no, we want you to stay what you are because you can't be what you're not. It's not going to work. Right. So it was kind of interesting to watch that dynamic when people had an opportunity to make Instagram or like TikTok. They didn't want it. They truly just want the space where it is. And I think that's frustrating for the platforms. And we're seeing that in a lot of their lobbying and a lot of the changes they're making. They're trying to capitalize on the success of each other. And it's just creating this kind of swirl of that's not how it works. It's
Yeah.
not it's for
I think
so many reasons.
every time I see an Instagram update, I see people complaining. Like, they recently changed the feed, your
Yeah.
Instagram feed to, like, rectangles, from, like, the squared, traditional feed that people used to have, and I saw a lot of people being really upset about that because they were like, "You ruined my feed, Instagram, like, it looks horrible now, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
Um, because they had all of their pictures and stuff, designed for it to look squared. So I saw a lot of people complaining about that, and I feel like that's just kind of I think that's the latest one I saw, but I think it's a trend of, like, people just always being upset at the new updates.
Well, it's because they've stopped updating in a way that prioritizes the users. They're currently updating in a way that is trying to gain more traffic away from other platforms.
Yeah.
So the just the foundations of where the changes are coming from is not where we need them as users. And when you're doing this as a business, keeping up with all of these trends and things is really frustrating and overwhelming. There's no way to keep up with all the updates on all the platforms all the time. And again, when they're making changes that don't make sense, it's really tough. So that's why I always say find like one or two people to follow that talk about social media. And I always say, even if it's not me, if I'm not your jam, I'm not your jam, but find your people, but only like two of them and stay up to date from them versus being overwhelmed following a million people, conflicting information, conflicting strategies, and you end up feeling very stuck and unable to post and not able to jump in and get your account up and running and really getting some traction with them also. Because this is a lot to track and this would wear a lot of people out. To me, it's fun and I'm passionate about it. But I know if you're a business, it's really frustrating, right?
Yeah, especially I think because not every business owner wants to be on camera. I think that's super common thing.
100. I have 3 today. So yes, 100%.
That's, like, a very big thing that I've noticed with business owners is that, like, yeah, okay, I'll get on social media, but I really hate making videos and I don't wanna show my face. I mean, my sister was having that issue the other day because she's, like, a music, she is a music major and she wants to give, like, instrument lessons because she plays a bunch of instruments and she wants to teach them, but she doesn't like to be on camera. She doesn't like to take pictures, and I was like, "Well, you should probably promote yourself on social media," and she was like, "Yeah, but I don't wanna make videos." Uh,
So funny. It's really true. I will tell you, if I can do it, anybody can do it because I had such a bad speech problem. I was in 9 years of therapy, like speech therapy, to be able to just speak in English. I just couldn't, nobody understood what I was saying when I was little. I got past that. And then, as I was growing up and going into the world, they were like, okay, we need to put you on video as the social media coordinator. I was like, the hell you are? Going down. And I was able to figure out a way to work through it. And what I find is that I have gotten to the point now where I can just pick up my phone and record a quick video. And when you take the focus off of how do I look? How's my hair?
Yes.
How's that? Which is hard, right? 100% it's hard. But when you can flip the script and go, there's somebody out there that needs to hear what I'm saying. If I can reach one person, 5 people, and give them some inspiration to keep going today, some inspiration to pick up that instrument, some inspiration to try this thing in their business, that's worth me putting myself out there a little bit. And so I always have people kind of flip the script. It's not about you. It's about you showing up to help somebody who's looking for you. They're scrolling, doom scrolling, hoping you come across their feed, and you won't if you don't put yourself out there. So that's what I
That's
would
so
do to
nice.
your sister.
That's such a sweet message. I think I had, like, a similar experience with this podcast, actually, because when we started doing it, me and my co-host, I was like, "No, I don't wanna be," because, like, we were gonna be the hosts, and we were gonna have to sort of talk to people, and I was so intimidated because I was like, "I don't what if I don't do a good job? I don't wanna, like what if I don't look good?" And all of these things that are sort of going through your head, and then you're just like, "Ah," and I mean, I kinda just did it and I think it's a growing experience because like, it definitely has been the learning. Like, I think I'm a lot better at it now than I was in my first episode. Shout out to that one first episode because you were very patient with me.
Pretty
But,
common.
yeah. And I feel like I'm a little bit less afraid now. Like, I'm not anxious that it's being recorded.
You know what I have people do too is I have people go to their favorite influencer, like Gary Vee is a great one, and scroll down to their like early videos and see how far they've come. Because I think we often compare ourselves to people of where they are now. And then we're starting our journey and we're like, but I don't look anything like that, or I don't have my stuff together enough to be like that. But if
Yeah.
you see where they started and what they've built and what they've built financially also, that can help you a little bit too, because nobody starts every and I mean, I help people all the time with podcast content and stuff. That first season, they're always like, "Oh, please don't take any clips from my first season." Like everybody has that. So it's just part of the journey and part of the process. But that
Yes.
doesn't mean that wasn't valuable content, and it doesn't mean the journey wasn't valuable.
No, and I think it can be a great way for you to see how much you've grown and
Yeah.
changed. I mean, I'm definitely not proud of, like, how I handled myself in some of my episodes because, it's not always the best. Sometimes I feel like I'm like, "Oh, I'm rambling too much," or maybe I did this wrong or blah, blah, blah. But I definitely feel like there's moments where I'm like, I've gotten so much better."
Yeah. And you only get better, and you can't get better unless you're taking actual imperfect action.
Yeah, unless you're, like, you're making those mistakes and then learning from them, you're just kinda you either do that or you just stay in the same place forever. So,
Yeah. Well, and actually, just really quick, so this is what I have business owners do. I have them, and this is by 100 plus package, but I have them film 1 hour of video and then clip that into their TikToks and their reels, and then use the transcript to become blogs, and then use the hooks from their TikToks and reels for graphic posts. So you can actually get all your content done if you can just get yourself on camera for an hour, a whole month of content done. So it's also worth it to get back to the things you enjoy doing if you can kind of push yourself out there just a little bit even.
yeah,
I
to
think that
just get it out of the way, even
just
if
get
it's
it
just a
done, man.
yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna survive it, and we're going to enjoy your message because so many experts are just holding back showing up online, and there's a lot of trash content out there. There's a lot of people that are just kind of winging what they're saying. If you have deep knowledge, if you like your sister, right? She knows all these instruments. If you have something you can bring that's valuable, it's a disservice to everybody if you're holding that back. We need you out there.
Yeah, and then you might be really successful. Like, I think I've seen people who, like, don't wanna do it, and then the first video they post is, like, viral, and I'm like, "Girl, what were you doing? Why were you waiting so much?"
Yes, often, very often happens. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great note to end it on, Jasmine, because we are running out of time, but it has been such a great conversation. You are so well spoken.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for being here. It was really fun to have you. I learned a lot from you. But I do, before we, part ways, I do want to give you the space to plug anything that you want to plug. If anything that we spoke about resonated with anybody listening, if anybody needs help with their social media, whether it's for personal reasons or business reasons, and they would like to work with you, space is yours.
Well, so you can find me and everything about me at jasminepartida.com. And I have my 100 post package where I help you create all your content in 1 hour a month. And then I have my Elevate University where I teach you the strategies you need to run your social media, or your team to run your social media and get that expert level strategy. My strategies, again, I've been doing it about 17 years, and we see an average of a 40% increase in sales from the strategies we use for organic social media. So, and I'm happy to have you follow me. I give a ton of free content on all of my socials. So you can connect with me on all the platforms. Right.
Awesome. I will be adding the links to all of that on the description of the video so that people can click and go on it easily for those of you who are on YouTube and video platforms. And if you're on the listening side, go to the video. It's what I can say. Um, Thank you so much for doing this, Jasmine. It was so great to have you today.
It was great to meet you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Good
I
conversation.
appreciate it so much. Guys, I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.